Hello and welcome back to my podcast, Can You Put Me on Guest List? I'm Katie Knight. I hope everybody is doing great. Just before we start, I just want to say a huge thank you for all of the support on the first 2 episodes of season 7. We've had so much great feedback and I'm just really grateful for everyone that's listened and watched or left a review or followed the podcast. It really, really means a lot. A lot of work goes into this podcast, so it's really nice to receive that. So thank you so much. Episode 3, I'm super excited about this one. Today's guest is a true architect of the modern music experience. Mark Newton has helped transform the global dance scene, not just through the lineups he curates, but the spaces he builds. From founding Hideout Festival to directing Field Day and Snowbombing and turning raw industrial spaces into iconic venues, which I'm sure a lot of you that are listening have been to. Printworks, Depot Mayfield and Drumsheds. Mark has redefined what festivals and clubbing can feel like. So in this episode, we get into what makes a truly great venue or festival, how clubs and festivals shape culture differently, and whether the rise of festivals means the end of clubbing as we know it. We talk about licensing pressure, the cost of going out, the decline of residencies, and what that means for the next generation of both artists and ravers. This episode is powered by TrackStack, the platform designed to help you build a sustainable career in electronic music. Whether you're managing demos, sending promos, leveling up your tracks, or monetizing your music knowledge, TrackStack makes the process easy and efficient. It's super easy to use. And if you want to give it a try, you can use the promo code CUPMOG. That is the first letters of Can You Put Me on Guest List for 10% off for life. So let's get into it. This is Can You Put Me on Guest List with Mark Newton. Mark cool. Newton.
Hi, Katie.
Welcome to Can You Put Me on Guest List.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Slightly hungover. Newcastle won their first trophy, well, the first domestic trophy in 70 years yesterday. So I was out quite late last night.
Well, you know what? You deserve to have celebrated if it's taken that long.
Yeah, I know. I feel that. I wasn't expecting it, so that's why I agreed to do this today.
Thinking that it was never going to happen.
Yeah, after 70 years, people generally lose hope.
Oh, what an exciting moment. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Nice little positive spin for the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having us here in your offices.
Thanks for coming along.
Nice little space.
Yeah, we've been here.
Not little, it's big space.
Yeah, we've been here since November. When I first moved to London, I worked in Soho, and I've missed it since we left. So when this came up, I dived on it straight away. It's like the space is amazing. It was actually just being used as a storage room.
Again, reusing spaces.
Yeah, exactly. There's a theme.
There's a theme. It's funny actually. I came in on Friday just to come and check out the space to see where we're going to do the podcast. And I bumped into Rob Yilmaz.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing a podcast with Mark." And it's funny because Rob was the very first person I interviewed on the podcast.
Oh, really?
In 2018 or 2019.
Right, okay.
And we recorded it in his house in a back bedroom with I had a little Zoom recorder on a table. You can hear sirens going by and cars and people shouting on the streets. And now we're here and we're video.
Yeah, it's a much slicker operation now, isn't it?
It was a bit of a full circle moment, so it was quite nice. It was really nice.
Great.
So there's lots to talk about.
There is.
A lot to talk about, but I would like to start, from the beginning. You've obviously built a career around venues and reimagining venues and live events, festivals. Where did it all begin? How did it all start for you, and where did it start for you?
I would say, well, it started in Holmfirth, which is a small town in West Yorkshire, sort of perfectly in between Manchester and Leeds. Mm-hmm. So in the late 90s, there were 2 cities where there was a lot going on with electronic music. And if I was to pinpoint where it kicked off for me, it would be at an adventure retreat in Cornwall when I was 14, and one of the lads playing a DJ Vibes Helter Skelter tape in the dorm room, and me listening to it and being like, what the fuck's this? And he's like, it's a rave tape. My brother's lent it to me. And I can always remember the older kids in school used to walk around and they all had Arc jackets on. And Arc was like the big rave in Leeds, the big house rave in Leeds in the sort of early to late 90s. And they all had cream jackets on. And I kind of knew there was something going on there. But as like a young teenager, I had no idea what it was, but I obviously saw all the older, cooler kids into it. So it's kind of like, what is this?
I want to be part of this.
Yeah, like this is obviously what the cool kids are doing. What is it?
Yeah.
Then I heard the music, and like my only reference point at that age was The Prodigy. I used to love The Prodigy. And it was like, okay, there's something here that I really like. I need to get out and learn about it.
Yeah.
And then I remember DJ Vibes was playing in the local club in Huddersfield, which is like the bigger town to where I lived. And I saw that he was playing like 3 months later on Bonfire Night. And I spoke to the older kids and I was like, can I get in with you to this rave?
Are you still 14 at this point?
Yeah. And they were like, yeah, just come along with us. And I remember going, I think I might have just, I think I'd turned 15 by the time the rave happened. And I remember going in there and just being like, oh my God, what is this? And that was it. That was just like the turning point. And by the time I turned 16 the following year, and I think that was, it'd been 99. By that point, I'd been to Cream, I'd been to Renaissance, I'd been to Bowlers in Manchester. I'd spent 2 weeks in Ibiza with my mate's mum, who basically said, as long as you're in bed by the time I get up to go to the pool with your little brother, then go where you want. So like at 16, I went to Manumission. I saw that freaked me out at 16 seeing a live sex show.
I can imagine.
That was a lot for a 16-year-old.
You went right in.
Yeah, we did like literally every day, every night we went to a different club, went to see Carl Cox at Space when he played for what became We Love.
Yeah.
So it was before his residency and it was before We Love was a thing. It was sort of the precursor to We Love. I can't remember what it was called actually, but we saw Carl do like an all day, all night set for like 8 hours. And then that was it. Like,
you're in.
I'm in. And here I am.
And here you are. Okay, so that's at 16. What's like your first job into music?
I put on a leavers party for high school, so when I was 16. Booked DJ Si, who was another sort of one of the I loved happy hardcore at like 15 because like it is just basically kids music.
Yeah.
So like I am a little bit more discerning now, obviously, and that's no beef with happy hardcore. It still has a very special place in my heart, and at least once a year I listen back to that DJ Vibes tape from Bude. Yeah, I had it on about a month ago, actually.
Last night after Newcastle.
Yeah. They were actually playing happy hardcore at like the afters for the victory. When they closed down the street, someone brought a speaker and was booting happy hardcore out. And
Love that.
Yeah, so I put on the leavers party for our school leaving at the local club where I'd seen DJ Vibes before that, and again that was me in. I was just like, okay, I just want to be a promoter. Like, I love this culture. I just met so many sound people from the off, and I was like, if this can be a career, then I want this to be my career.
Yeah.
Obviously, my parents weren't exactly like into the whole this being my career.
I don't think any parents are at the beginning though,
no,
are they?
like very risk averse working class people from Newcastle, and they just wanted me to like go to university and like just sort of like just establish myself in a nice, safe career. And this just wasn't their vibe. But here I am. So.
And then, so fast forward, I don't know, how many years is that?
So that was 26 years ago.
26 years ago.
26 years ago. So the first thing that I did that people will probably have heard of would have been Metropolis, which was a big drum and bass rave in the early to late 2000s.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were still running it up until about 4 or 5 years ago, but like in our heyday, me and my partner Wilf, we were running shows in maybe like 9 or 10 UK cities.
Wow.
And yeah, that is where Wilf started running it in Manchester and Liverpool. I was doing a smaller event in Leeds. He wanted to come to Leeds. Me and him got chatting. I was like, look, I can come on board. And basically, I'm a lot more organised with Wilf. He won't get pissed off with me saying that. Like, I'm far more organised than Wilf.
There has to be one.
Yeah, so I just basically said, like, we're doing these cities. I can come in. I can streamline this into an actual business. And then we can just do a lot more.
Yeah.
So that was, I think Wilf set it up in 2002. I set up my much smaller event in 2002. And I think we started working together in 2004, 2005. We did Metropolis, we did it all over the UK. We hosted festival stages, we did bits in Europe. We did a small Ibiza residency in 2007, I think it was.
Where was it in Ibiza?
We were doing the back room at Eden and Kanya,
Yeah.
because that was sort of the turning point in Ibiza where it wasn't just minimal techno and trance.
Yeah.
Because there was definitely, when I first started going to Ibiza, it was house, techno and trance.
Yeah.
And it started to turn a little bit. And then following on from that, I wanted to do something that was a bit more representative as to what was going on in the UK at that time, in the UK musically at that time, because I was friends with Dan Blackledge, who was running Wax On. They were doing a lot of the sort of electro artists, that sort of indie crossover stuff as well. And a dubstep was breaking through, and I basically knew there was a crowd for it in Ibiza. Because there were so many UK people, especially in San An. So I met up with Andy and Mike from Manumission, started working on Manumission with them. I was basically there running Metropolis, but also having a bit of a jolly. Met them, went for dinner with them, got on really well. They had just launched Ibiza Rocks Hotel. And basically my jolly ended up turning into like being offered a position with Andy. Manumission finished at the end of that season. They went their separate ways, and I spoke with Andy about introducing all these artists that I was doing in the UK and Dan was doing in the UK into Ibiza. So then we set up Reclaim the Dance Floor at Eden, which ran for 2 years in 2009 and 2010. And we had Calvin Harris there, we had Annie Mac, Major Lazer, Chasing Status, Screaming Benga. Wow. We were giving people a lot of those artists were getting their sort of first proper gigs in Ibiza.
Yeah.
Like they were doing big tickets in the UK, but the Ibiza market wasn't really for them.
Yeah.
But then what happened there, as often happens when things get successful in Ibiza, some of the bigger clubs came in with higher fees. And also we had a bit of a fallout with Eden. It was the old management of Eden. We didn't really get along, and it just wasn't working. So a friend of mine was running Outlook in Croatia. I'd chatted to him just casually about what had been going on in Ibiza. He said, "Oh, we're going to leave the resort where Outlook is currently. They want another British festival there." So I chatted with Dan, Wilf. We were also working with the Warehouse Project guys at that time. Went to see them and said, look, we're going to leave Ibiza. It's not working. We want to replicate what we're doing in Ibiza in Croatia, where there's not going to be this competition. We're not just going to basically have to pay inflated fees to get the artists. And that's how Hideout was born.
And Hideout started what year?
2011.
2011, wow.
So this is the 15th year of Hideout, although we've only run 13 because we missed 2 years because of COVID. We've had 15 years of lineups. Like the lineups in 2020 and 2021 were great, but the shows just didn't happen.
Oh, annoying.
Yeah.
Wow, 15 years.
Yeah. And I remember thinking when that started, fuck, I'm getting a bit old now. So now I just feel really old.
Keeps us alive.
It
though,
does, yeah, it does. It
keeps
keeps you
us
young.
in this industry. And then, so you were in Leeds. What brought you down to London?
My girlfriend.
Nice.
We got together and she had already accepted a job in London.
Okay.
And Northern people have got beef with London as like a predisposition. And I was just like, I would never move to London until I started coming down here with her. And I was like, you know what, this London's all right.
It's so funny. My dad is from London and my mum's from Leeds, and they're constantly going on about Leeds and London.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I just had it in my head, I'm Northern, I'm going to stay in the North. And then I got here and I just saw, look, I love the North of England. Like, listen, I couldn't sound any more Northern if I tried. But I just saw there was an opportunity here in London and wanted to do something different. I've been in Leeds for about 10 years by that point.
Okay.
And I just wanted to try something new. And with Hideout being successful, it was 2 or 3 years old at that point. I just knew there was a lot more I could do with it by being here.
And when did your work with Broadwick Live start?
So that was about 2017. Broadwick got acquired by Global, a big media agency. They then give them funds to go out and acquire other festivals, and Hideout was one of the first festivals that they acquired.
Right, okay.
And then as part of that, I joined the board of their festival company.
Okay.
So there was the sort of main global board, and then they had like a sub board that was just focused on live music. So I joined that. We had an amazing office in Camden. I think by the time that ended, we had about 25 festivals. So basically Global changed their strategy and wanted to flip all the festivals so that they could focus on the media aspect of their business. So they acquired a large media agency, outdoor advertising agency called Clear Channel, which was actually what Live Nation was spun out of originally.
Oh, really?
So they acquired that and needed the funds that they'd put into the festivals back to basically acquire Clear Channel. So they just had a change of strategy. So at that point, we did a management buyout of the music venues into Broadwick, and then we sold off all the music festivals, including Hideout. So Hideout went to Superstruct, which I'm sure you guys are aware of.
Yeah, got loads of things.
80 plus festivals now. So Field Day and Snowbombing, which I'm the festival director. I was managing those festivals when they were part of Broadwick. They're now part of Superstruct. So I now run them on the behalf of Superstruct as well.
You're a busy man.
Yeah, I get about, and then on top of that, I've got Verso, which is my music travel agency. So we do, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. We basically do holiday packages to, I think about 12, maybe more now, festivals around Europe. Our own festivals that I manage, but we also do it for third-party festivals as well. And then I've got Oya, which is my, it's a strange one to describe, but essentially it is a property marketplace for the food industry.
Okay.
It's a tech platform. I was involved in the music tech business round about 2016. I was the third member of staff member. That's a member that makes me sound like a boy band or something. So I was the third staff member after the two founders in a company called Melody VR, which was a music VR platform. Amazing concept, probably 10 years ahead of its time, because VR still isn't advanced enough now to do what that company was intending to do. But eventually that company bought Napster, flipped everything into Napster, and then we sold that business 3 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have worked with so many different venues, festivals, a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've only probably just told me like 10 or 15% of actually everything that you've done. And even like with Broadwick, they reimagined venues such as Printworks and Drumsheds and turns them into, you know, some of the biggest and most talked about clubs in the world. What do you think makes the perfect festival or venue in 2025?
That is a good question. I think with my time at Broadwick, because I left Broadwick in November last year, I really, really enjoyed working with those guys, but I think I'd started to wind down my involvement working there as a director post-COVID, so that we we separated ways in November, totally amicably. Those guys come and work in my office once a week, which I was telling you about earlier. It's a really interesting question. I think there's definitely a difference between what makes a perfect music venue and what makes a perfect festival, like a festival venue. And again, it's like my experience in festivals has been primarily overseas, and I think location on all of it, first and foremost, like being wowed when you walk into somewhere. I think that is, whether you're walking into a festival for the first time or walking into a music venue for the first time, there's got to be something unique. It doesn't necessarily always have to be vast, like some of the venues that Broadwick are known for. Like, I feel like it's just got to be different, and there's got to be like something that grabs you from the outset. Like, some of my favourite venues personally are really small, but they've all got something unique about them.
Like which ones would be your favourite, even if they're not yours that you've worked
Yeah, I think for me now, in my 40s, like I want something different personally than what I would necessarily work on.
Yeah.
So like, I think there's a group of us sort of mid to late 30s, early 40s, and we go out sort of dad raving now, as we call it. And we always try and pick out like unique spaces, and that we try and find things that are a little bit off the beaten track. Good music policy, amazing sound systems. So like places that we've been recently, we went to... the name escapes me. God, this is going to drive me around the bend. In Margate, in Cliftonville and Margate, Faith and Strangers.
Okay.
That is unbelievable. We went there to see Joy Orbison play on Bank
Nice.
Holiday, on the August Bank Holiday. It's about 200 cap, amazing sound system. It's like really nice because like the DJ booth has got windows all behind it and you can see the sea, but obviously as it gets darker it starts to feel a bit more moodier and vibier, and they've got a terrace you can sit out on during the day, so it's like feels quite chilled, and then it like goes from like daytime to evening and the transition's good.
That's
and
nice.
like, and I think with that venue as well, like there's a local crowd, there's a travelling crowd. What I really like to see is going to venues where there are 18-year-olds and the 50-year-olds there, like, and I see that a lot more in Europe than I do in the UK, and I think that is one of the elements in the UK that is a little bit broken. There's sort of this feeling where like people feel like they've grown out of it. It's not very seen as very adult, whereas in Europe I think that's the case, and in certain pockets in the UK I think that happens as well.
That's really interesting. Do you think that's just a mentality that we have over here?
Yeah, and you know what? I think it is definitely down to sort of how people engage with clubbing. I think like people do everything in the UK to excess, right?
Yeah.
And people go out drinking to excess.
Yeah.
People go out clubbing to excess. And then when they turn that back when they're older, they feel like they can't engage in it the same way. So all their thoughts around clubbing has this late teens, early 20s, like being absolutely battered. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not done in a sensible way. It's kind of like, would I expect to go to a pub and drink 4 litres of White Lightning at the age of 40? You wouldn't, would you? But like in their heads, they see clubbing as that, I feel, and like they can't see how you can go clubbing and be an adult, which I think is a bit weird, and I enjoy it much more when I go to venues now. I generally find like if you go to Germany, if you go to Amsterdam, Holland in general, like they have a much healthier way of clubbing, and the culture feels a lot better. But I also think their economies are more focused on it, their nightlife policies are more focused on it, and it is seen as a positive thing for culture, whereas I still think there's a massive disconnect in the UK.
How do you ensure that, like, at a festival, you create a long-lasting festival culture and community? Because obviously with clubbing, you know, they're long-lasting communities that have been built up for a really long time, because, you know, people go to clubs a lot more than festivals. Some people will just go as just like a one-off. So how do you create that culture around a festival?
It's quite tricky because people tend to engage in different festivals at different times of their life.
Yeah.
So I think of what I did when I was younger, and like I think especially in the north of England, like say Leeds Festival was the sort of coming of age festival that everyone went to after college, but you wouldn't like necessarily be going to Leeds in your mid-20s, late 20s. I think so. It's quite hard. Like Hideout, I think again is a bit of a coming of age festival. Like we're still really young. Like we never designed Hideout. The intention was never there to be like a really young festival. It's just that is what it's become in terms of the music policy, and I think people see it as like a rite of passage where you generally go to Hideout in the same way that you go to Ibiza for the first time. I actually think Hideout's probably a bit more accessible than Ibiza now because of the cost. But our average age at Hideout's like 21 to 23. Because of that, you're not going to come back to Hideout when you're like in your late 20s, early 30s, because like you're going to feel too old. But then you might move into a different festival. I think like Lost Village have got it really well. Like Andy and Jay, the founders of Lost Village, we used to live together in Ibiza. So I was there when they were coming up with the concept of Lost Village and chatted to them about when they're having the ideas. And they've garnered this really nice community feeling where people feel part of it. And I think they've got a really good product that has, I know this is probably one of I've seen in your questions you're going to ask me, I'm sort of preempting so this is definitely something you were going to ask me anyway. And I think they've harnessed that really nicely, that people engage in the content, they feel part of that community. Whereas I think with some of the festivals that I work on now, it's sort of a little bit of a transient community. You build a community for a period in people's lives, but you don't necessarily expect them to be there forever. I think Field Day and Snowbombing are a little bit different, because with Field Day being a central London festival, that we've only got people for a really short window of time. That the festival opens at midday, it finishes at 10:30. That it's really hard to put a stamp on that in the same way as if you've got people at Hideout for a week or at Lost Village for four days. So what we can do is be a little bit more clever with the musical programming and put on different acts for different people. So I think that's what, when I took Field Day back on, which happened in September this year, I hadn't worked on it for 3-4 years at that point. What we wanted to do was making sure that we had different music genres and it appealed to more people. And I wanted people to look at the festival and go, I can go to that, but my mates that are into different music styles will still find enough there to engage them. And again, I think the further into the Field Day sort of development that we get, the more I want it to be similar to what I've mentioned previously. There's music there for 18-year-olds, but someone at my age could also go, you know what, there are 10, 15 acts that I'm really into. And you don't just have to be into one musical genre to do that. I mean, like everything is electronic, but there's lots of different subgenres of electronic in there.
You mentioned before about, when people go to festivals, you've got such a short period of time whilst they're there. This is just something that I'm just thinking now as you're speaking. Do you think that affects people's attention span in terms of like, if younger people are just used to going to festivals all the time and they're used to just seeing like hour and a half, 2-hour sets, do you think that then affects younger people going to clubs and listening to the same DJ or a lengthy set for like from open to close, for example?
Yes. Yeah, well, I think that's the whole thing about this generation, not in a negative context, but I think people have shorter attention spans. They kind of want to get to the drop as quickly as possible. It is more about moments now. And I think, I think we're in a very sort of transitional stage between clubbing on sort of that smaller level, clubbing on a larger level, and then festivals. And I think that when you look at Printworks, Drumsheds, the Warehouse Project, etc., it's sort of a middle ground between a festival. They are the same size as festivals.
I was actually going to say that to you. Would you class like somewhere like Warehouse Project or Printworks as a festival, as a club?
Well, they are clubs in the fact that they've got roofs over their heads, but I feel like in terms of scale, production, capacities, they are festivals essentially. And I feel like they've got a very important place within sort of the culture. And I don't know, sometimes there is some like not negative connotations you see online about people having an issue around this, but ultimately there have always been big capacity indoor events. Like I had it when I was growing up. I used to go to Cream, I used to go to Gatecrasher, used to go to Renaissance in Nottingham. Like they were all like 2, 3, 4, 5,000 cap. Yeah, fair enough. Printworks is around that cap, Drumsheds is larger, Warehouse Project's larger, but I used to go to Helter Skelter, which was like 8,000 people. Like, it's not like this is something new, and there was still always a healthy, smaller club scene around that. Like when I used to go to Back to Basics was always in venues around like 500 to 1,500 capacity. Like, I just feel that there are less people going out now. People engage with electronic music differently to what they did when I was younger, and so there are going to be casualties towards this, and I don't mean casualties disrespectfully. Like, some things that worked 10, 15 years ago just aren't going to work anymore. Like, I think the first thing that I noticed was when I was young, every town had a club, and it was an underground club. You always had your Sharon and Tracy clubs, like your high heels and your shiny shoes, but you always had an underground club. Like the one I mentioned that I went to for the first time. They started to die out probably in the early to mid 2000s, and that was just a progression of how things were. I think what is damaging to the scene now is when smaller, more institutional clubs in bigger cities have to close because of redevelopment, have to close because of the rising cost of energy bills. I think we might never see that come back. I think like some of it will naturally happen. Like it does, no disrespect to this type of sort of venue as well, but it does frustrate me a little bit when people put stuff like Oceana's in the same category as like the Archers in Glasgow or Wire in Leeds, like Mint Club in Leeds. Like they're not nightclubs. Like they to me are not nightclubs. That there is no culture behind them. Like that part of that way of drinking, that going out to get drunk and the drink being the primary goal, to me that would never work with this generation of people going out because they're more health conscious. They don't have the disposable income we probably had. They don't have the security that we used to have when university was cheap. And like your parents were probably not affluent in terms of sort of being rich, but like there wasn't the financial pressure on parents and there wasn't the financial pressure on kids as there is now.
Yeah, well, there was actually a recent study by the Observant that was on behalf of NTIA, which was a study on how much younger people have been going out compared to the previous year, and like numbers were really, really low, and it was all down to financial restrictions. Safety was another big one, and then the third one was transport, public transport, and getting back from some of these venues. So I guess with like the mixture between them issues and then the fact that so many clubs are closing down, do you think that we're at risk of losing a generation of clubbers?
That's an interesting question. Yes and no. I think things do come in peaks and troughs. I saw it in the early 2000s when there was a bit of a crash after the millennium. Like the millennium was just a massive loss maker for pretty much every promoter that did something there. I think Gatecrasher was probably one of the only successful things I remember happening that day. I just remember all the costs being inflated, and then there was a big sort of crash in the early 2000s, and that was just before sort of Fabric opened, and there was then a bit of a renaissance, and then 2008 there was another crash again after the financial crisis. People started going out less, and I feel like we're in a bit of a dip at the minute, but this is the biggest dip I can remember from memory. This dip seems to have been happening since the pandemic. And I don't think we're going to come out of this dip anytime soon.
Really?
Yeah, and I think, look, we're sat in the middle of Soho, and if anywhere was a perfect example of like issues with licensing laws and just generally like where things are going wrong, I think just look no further than Soho. Like pretty much every license application for doing anything late night or interesting is getting rejected by the council, the police, the sort of local residential groups. And what confuses me is there's a lot going on about there are less and less residents in Soho. There's less. I think there's 1/3 of the amount of people living in Soho than there was 20 years ago. And like, I think that needs to be protected as well. But then people aren't getting licenses in Soho because of the residential complaints. So it's kind of like, it's this mad contrast that those two things are happening at the same time, but they're both being blamed for each other.
Yeah.
So like, what is actually happening
What's going
here?
on?
Yeah, like it is mad that Soho's been like the entertainment centre of London for 200 years, probably even longer. But name one club, one good club that is in Soho these days, or close to Soho. Like the last one that I remember, proper underground club, was the End. And that wasn't strictly Soho, but look, it's not that far away from Soho. And the End is still sat there completely empty. That it got bought by developers years ago, and it's still sat there completely empty. But I just don't understand why there can't be one underground club in Soho with a late night licence. I read Westminster Council's new sort of regenerational plan for Soho at the weekend, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it does just feel like there is a lot of box ticking in it. Like, I can speak about this a little bit more openly because I don't work with the council, and it's not something that, obviously, that a lot of people that would like to comment on this have got their hands tied because they work with the council. But I think, to me, it's a lot of sort of box ticking, and there isn't any depth in it or any real exploration on what is needed.
Do you think then the growth in popularity of festivals is now, or are festivals now becoming more of a necessity rather than an alternative?
To a certain extent, yeah, because you just cannot find the right spaces, get the right licenses on them. That it feels like gentrification has like pushed things to the outer limits, and I think in every city in the UK, that there just aren't the spaces available to do what I would class as a real club. Like somewhere that has got a full-time license that isn't a meanwhile space. Because I think that's where Broadwick is unique, and they've done a really good job in turning what is essentially meanwhile spaces into, now if you look at their getting the license granted for the new Printworks, that has gone because they've proven successfully how much of a cultural benefit that is to Canada Water. Printworks Part 2, V2 is going to open again soon, and that's going to be a permanent space. And that to me is amazing that that's happened, because generally what happens with most venues now is you will get a developer that wants meanwhile use before something gets turned into residential or commercial buildings, etc. You would be hard pushed to find many spaces that you could go into now and do something new with the 3 o'clock, with the 4 o'clock. I don't even think you need late licenses anymore, even for clubbing spaces. I think that side of clubbing has sort of disappeared. People don't club in the UK till 6 a.m.
Yeah,
I love the fact that you've got places like Ford that allow you to do that, because there are still people that want to do it. But I remember when I was younger that you would just stay out later. But the mad thing is, a lot of people forget that the UK, pretty much all of the UK, had a 2 a.m. license. Like, I remember when I first started going out, you would have 2 a.m. licenses, and then you go back to an afters. And those afters would either be back at a house, a warehouse, the service stations. I remember like everyone used to go to the service stations, and we'd like have parties at the service stations, listening to tunes in the car park till like 6, 7, 8 in the morning. That was sort of part of the culture then, because you couldn't get a license past 2 a.m. But I feel like now, if you could get good underground club spaces, 4 a.m. license in areas where they're controlled, you're not causing any sort of issues with residents, then they probably would thrive if you did them in each capital city, but those spaces don't exist.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, really sad. Like when we closed Canal Mills, which was my venue in Leeds, that got, again, it was meanwhile, I loved that space as well, because it was mixed use. We didn't just use it for music. We had fashion shows there. We did like food events. It was great. We wanted to replicate what we did at Canal Mills. Spent 3 years looking and couldn't find anywhere close to it.
It's sad to think, like, I don't know, what is the experience of clubbing going to be like in like 50 years time?
Yeah.
You know, like, are we going to lose all of this that we've built and had in the past, and then it's just going to become nothing?
It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because there might be a generation that want to come back to this, but it might take 10, 15, 20 years
maybe.
Where they're like, this was really fucking cool. This happened in the 90s when our parents were kids, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when my daughter grows up to 18, what is her clubbing experience going to be?
Yeah.
That's a sort of, that is interesting, but like I said, I do think we're in this bit of a weird lull at the minute.
What about for an artist as well? Because obviously, like, a lot of big artists have grown through small club residencies, but now not most artists, but a lot of artists really concentrate more on like the festival circuit. So do you think that that's going to affect the development of underground scenes as well? Or do you think it's a natural evolution?
It's just a bit of a weird one. Like, I like the fact that the industry is more professionalised now, but to a certain extent, it has killed that part of the scene.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you're an artist that's got a bit of a buzz about you, 15, 20 years ago, you would go and play at all the small clubs.
Yeah.
And then you would get to bigger caps and bigger caps. Then you get your residencies in like big spaces. But that has gone now because you essentially will get a manager after 1 or 2 tunes being released.
Yeah.
Your manager will generally have a bigger artist already. You will fit into their slipstream to a certain extent. And they will go, well, why would you want to go and play Bognor Regis on a Wednesday? I can get you a tour in America. And it's because it's such, it's always been international in terms of electronic music, but now the world feels smaller. And I feel that, especially non-UK artists, probably come here and go, you can do London, you can do Manchester, and don't really do anything else in the winter in the UK. So that in itself sort of kills the scene slightly. And then again, like, for those smaller artists, the clubs don't exist if they wanted to do it anyway. It's like, yeah, that's true. It's like, where would they go if like they wanted to do what was traditionally there? Those small town clubs, my mate calls it regional bangers. Right, the 2000s and the early 2010s were full of regional bangers where you do your big cities and you do Europe and you do America at weekends or in sort of periods of time, and you do your regional bangers Monday to Thursday. Yeah. And you just pop up everywhere, and there'd be little clubs, 200 to 800 cap, and you'd just be able to fill your diary with those. That is completely gone, and that makes it really hard for smaller emerging artists to take this seriously as a job, as a career, because those gigs might have only paid 300, 500, but if you're doing 4 a week, it's like that is your base of being able to step away from working part-time into having like this as a serious career.
But also, I think that in some way it also affects the development of the artist in terms of like the art of DJing, because like with residencies, you know, DJs will do like open to close sets. You learn how to read a room. You can experiment. You know, you're with a crowd from start to beginning. Whereas artists now that just go and play festivals, they have that 1.5, 2 hour slot. They'll play their bangers and that's it, and then go. So, I think not being able to have these residencies or the lack of residencies can also affect, you know, how DJs play.
Yeah, and also how many DJs start off as DJs these days versus how many producers DJ to play out to people. Because look, unless you're a really successful artist, you're not making money off Spotify streams. No. You're not making money off vinyl releases. Like, touring is the only place. Touring and sort of sync are the only places. You're publishing are probably the only 2 places that you are making good money off as like a mid-sized artist. Obviously, if you've got a really strong manager, they will open up a lot more revenue streams for you. But sorry, I've completely lost where I was going with that.
Newcastle's kicked in. So you were saying that artists now are like not really, you know, unless they're touring, they're not making money off Spotify and, you know.
Yeah, correct. So I do know where I was going with that again now. Yeah, so I think, how many DJs have you seen that are just DJs over like the past 10 years? Like, to me, the only person that comes in my head when I'm like, who is just a DJ that just DJs, is Ben UFO.
Yeah.
And he is a fucking amazing DJ.
Yeah.
Like, DJ Harvey, an amazing DJ. But these people have cut their teeth in small clubs, have been around for years. Like, I just don't think that world doesn't exist anymore, and that is sad. Like, people that have grown up, like Jackmaster, again, like, he was an amazing DJ. Like, it just doesn't happen anymore. Like, people are just producers that might become good DJs because they've got an ear for music already, they're already making good music, so like, they understand what makes a great track, but you do need to have that sort of induction period of like getting used to playing to people, rather than literally going, like I say, playing for an hour and a half, playing all your own tunes or whatever the bangers are of that day. It's not that there's no skill to it, it's just a very different skill.
Yeah. As somebody that's worked in festivals and clubs, what would you say would be a perfect model to keep club culture alive whilst embracing the festival boom?
I think finding those spaces that we've discussed, and also helping support those spaces if they do already exist. We don't need as big a footprint as there were in like the late 90s, early 2000s of venues, because there just isn't the amount of people that want to go to those clubs. But it's nurturing those clubs that still do exist. Sub Club in Glasgow is a great example of that. I'm trying to think of others. Like, there just aren't that many small institutional clubs where like they need as much support as they can to survive, but each city does need one. Like, I think the lads that run the warehouse in Leeds as well, Kirk and Will, they're doing an amazing job. It's about 1,000 capacity. They have got that nailed. The production's great. They've got a great team behind it. Like, every city needs one of those clubs. It doesn't need 2, 3, 4, 5 like it used to, because there aren't the amount of customers there to support them. But it needs one. Like, every big city or every city in the UK should have one. And there are some great spaces, but it's just there needs to be more of them or more support in place for them if they're struggling. Like, if this was ballet or the opera, do you know what I mean? Like,
different story.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they basically need protection against development, protection against rising costs, and they just need to be seen as playing a really important part of culture in the UK. Like, obviously, the UK's clubbing scene took references from America, took references what was happening in Ibiza, but essentially what we developed in the late 80s and early 90s was very UK, it was very unique, and we're sort of seeing the tail end of it now. And that is pretty sad. And we've just got to do enough to keep these important cultural spaces around. And there just needs to be the ecosystem. To me, like, you've got your 200, 300 cap clubs, you've got your 800,000 cap clubs, then you've got your big super clubs as they were, and then you've got your festivals. And that should be the ecosystem, in my mind anyway.
How do you see the balance between clubs and festivals shifting in, like, say, the next 5 years?
Unless something's done more towards festivals and less towards venues. I think the NTIA are doing a really good job. I mean, they graft to try and get as much done as possible, but I was hoping that the new government would engage more than they have been. I think everyone was, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think everyone was hoping for more of a shift than basically Conservatives light, which is what we've got at the minute.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't want this to come across as negative, because there are still so many amazing spaces. Like, another one that I'm going to shout out is Golden Line in Todmorden. So Todmorden, little town in Halifax, that it's essentially a pub that serves Thai food during the day, but they have amazing DJs playing all night sets. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful little town. Like, we go up there once a year. We go and do like a walk during the day, like down the canal, go to all the old pubs, and then have a rave up in the evening. And it finishes at 1 p.m, which for someone that is 41 years old is fucking perfect.
It finishes at 1 p.m?
1 a.m. 1 a.m, not 1 p.m. That would be
like,
no.
That's a really long time.
That is the opposite of what I really want these days. Yeah, so it starts at like 8 and finishes at 1.
What are your thoughts on daytime parties?
I mean, as someone that's getting on a bit, I fucking love them. But I think they fit the culture a bit more these days. Like I said, people don't want to stay out till 5, 6 a.m. Or the bulk of people don't want to stay. That's wrong. That got that slightly wrong. Like, most people want to go clubbing and be home at not a sensible time, but like, don't want to be getting in at 7, 8, 9 in the morning like I used to when I was younger. So I think daytime raves are a really good part of that. But also I think, for me, if I was going to say what the perfect experience would be, for me it's probably like 6 till 2, 6 till 3, because I feel like darkness plays into the culture, and I feel like it's a different feeling when you come out of a venue and there's nothing else going on. And like, I feel that definitely still plays a part in what we do. Do you know what I mean? There's something a little bit more special about it when everyone else is sleeping and you're still awake. And you lose that a little bit with daytime clubbing. But I think it also plays a big part. And also licensing a lot of the time means that you can't do late events anymore.
I knew you were the perfect person to talk about this topic with. I've been wanting to cover this on the podcast for such a long time. So, I've really enjoyed talking about this.
Yeah, it's been fun, and it's quite nice just to get these thoughts out of my head.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Because I sit there and discuss this with loads of people in the office all the time. And like, sometimes it's hard just to be able to speak openly and honestly about it.
Well, thank you.
That's been great.
It's been lovely.
Yeah.
To end, we always play a game.
Yeah.
It's a game. It's a question. It's called Pass the Question. So every guest passes a question on to the next guest. So your question is, phones or no phones on the dance floor?
Absolutely no phones on the dance floor. No phones in the club. Full stop.
Nice. I expected you to say that. Although part of me did think, I wonder if you would be like, I don't know, for like new venues are opening, does it help in like bringing people to the club?
Oh, you know what? It's such... My personal feeling is no phones on the dance floor. But I think to a certain extent, yes, it does.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, especially with Printworks, like the first Tale of Us show with their visuals, like that has become synonymous with the production at Printworks.
Exactly.
And like, you see where that's developed into an emo going over to the Sphere and doing like 10, 12 nights. Like, that for me, like, from seeing where that's evolved from there, like, yes, that's probably helped us as a venue, or helped Printworks value, but also helped him as an artist as well.
Definitely.
And what he's gone on to do with that is absolutely fucking amazing. But for me personally, the vibes are better when the cameras are away.
Yeah, agree. What's your question for the next guest?
Right, so if you could have guest list to any event in history, what would it be? And I mean not necessarily a music event, any event.
I love that.
Historical event, like, what would be the one thing that you would want the guest list for?
What would yours be?
Fuck knows. I've been thinking about this all day. Like, something amazing, something maybe around the Romans or the Aztecs or the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Like, just to be somewhere that something mad happened culturally. Like,
I love that. I love that you've tied that in with the guest list theme as well.
yeah.
Very well thought. And speaking of guest lists, we always end on this last question, and I'm sure that this is like a question that you're asked 5,000 billion times a year. Do you have a guest list rule?
I absolutely do. Do not fucking ask me the week of the show.
Does that happen often?
It happens every show.
Does it?
And I'm just like, do you not think we're busy enough to have to deal with this?
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. We've definitely had that one before. But
Right,
I feel like
okay,
that's an ongoing
I think
rule.
everyone in the industry will be thinking the exact same thing.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Mark.
Cool.
It's been so
Thank you for
lovely to
having
chat
me.
with you. Thank you for having us here in the offices. And yeah, we'll see you. I'll ask you for guest list for something.
Yeah, not on the week of the show.
Thank you so much.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. And a reminder that this is on YouTube and Spotify if you're listening and you'd prefer to watch it. And remember to subscribe and all of those things. Thanks.
Thanks.